Hello everyone, welcome to Onion Skin, and it's time for us to start animating in Toon Boom Studio. Now if you've been following along, we've been building this character here who I like to call the Domestic Killbot. He's a still drawing at the moment, just a whole bunch of vectors just kind of sitting there. So this is just going to be a general introduction to the timeline view, how it kind of works, how frames work, and yeah, get a bit comfy for it before we break him up and bring him to life properly. So yes, this is the timeline view here. It's got a series of layers going down here and a series of frames going this way. Now, if you've ever made like a flip book animation, you know, you draw one picture, you go to the next piece of paper, you draw another picture, and after you've done that a whole bunch of times, you grab it between your thumb and forefinger, flip it back and forth, and it will start to look like it's moving. Digital animation is exactly the same concept. Each little block space moving down here represents one drawing, and when you play it, this line here will jot down all of them. It will show every picture for one fraction of a second, and it will begin to simulate movement. The program allows you to set your frame rate. That's how many times it will show an image per second. Usually animators will work at 12 frames per second, or 25 frames, or anything up to 30. The higher the frame rate, the more drawings you're going to have to make it look like it's moving. Now, the way Toon Boom represents its drawings is in a few different ways. There's frames and there's cells. These are two very different things. Cells are the drawings. So this drawing here is one cell, right now represented for one frame. If I click over here, right click and go to extend exposure, you can see the green block on it comes all the way up to frame 10. So we can see if I move the scrubber across, he's visible for 10 frames and then vanishes again. If I copy and paste the frame all the way out here, we can see the exposure goes all the way out to frame 40 and then vanishes. I can select a chunk of it, delete that, you can see he's visible, disappears, becomes visible again. So wherever there's green, the character is, yep, he is there. So if I play that, that's our animation. Where there is green, he's there. Where he's not, he disappears. So for example, if I just delete every second frame, like that, put it on loop and play, we get a flickering animation because he's there for one frame, then he's not there for a frame, repeat. So there's several different shortcuts to keep in mind when using the timeline. A and S will move you back and forth per one frame. E and R will manually increase and decrease the exposure of your current cell. Z and X will zoom in and out of the timeline, and when you click up here in the stage, it will zoom in and out of the artwork. So that's something definitely to keep in mind when you're drawing away and you press X to zoom in and your timeline starts zooming and you get really frustrated. What am I doing wrong? Just tap up here and it will start working properly. Now there's a few different buttons along here. What do they all do? This one here with the three kind of shapes, if you look really closely, that's add a new drawing layer. So I'll ram that a few times. And what I'm going to do is put a colorful spot on each one. I've named each layer after what it was. I should probably call the first one Killbot, actually. And you can see there's several different layer types. This first one that's also called Killbot is the reference material that I brought in right from the start. We're done with him. We can delete that. The red minus will delete a layer. The green plus will create drawings as well, just like this one did. But this one's a bit quicker because it just creates in one step. The green plus does several different layer types. So we've seen three of them, which is the reference material, the camera, and the drawing. The reference material is image. You can also import sound. Pegs will do a whole probably series on, and there's a whole lot of crazy effects and stuff. Yeah, good fun. Don't need to worry about too many of those right now. These eyes here that look up and down as the mouse goes up and down will turn all your layers on and off. Whereas this one next to it will turn off all layers except for the current one selected. These checkboxes here will turn off other layers so you can't see them. Something that often is confusing in Toon Boom Studio is that even if you turn it off, the layer you currently have selected will always be visible to you. The reason for that is Toon Boom Studio has no proper way of locking layers. This is something that is very hard to get used to, especially when you move up to Animate and Animate Pro. They do have locking layers. The way of compensating this is you only have direct access to the layer that you currently have selected. So when you're on a layer, you can always edit it no matter what, but you cannot gain access to the other ones. So if I'm on the magenta layer here, you can see we'll only select the magenta color. I have no way of getting to that cyan or that red unless I go down to the red layer. So what do you do if you want to select all of them? Now, unfortunately, there's no way of selecting all of the artwork directly. So one has to be very careful when they are creating stuff. That's why this character was drawn all on one layer. I will be separating him into different layers for animation purposes later, but it meant that while the artwork process was taking place, I was able to, just access the whole thing at any one moment. If you want to move all of these at the same time, you create what's called a peg. So pegs are here. That's create peg. That's delete peg. We'll create one there. Select all of these layers, pop them underneath, and there you go. They get slotted underneath. This tool here will pick up pegs. There you go. So now I can move the whole lot around, just like that. And the drawings underneath remain unaffected. So once again with exposure, if I pull this one out, that one there, that one there, that one there, what we'll see in our animation now is they kind of just turn off as their exposure is limited. Now say you're making an animation and you want to change one drawing to another. So this red one here, we want it to change from being a circle to a square as it comes out. So here, okay, so I'm on this frame now, so typically what one would do, erase it and then pop in a square, just like that. Well, it's gone. It's not coming back because we haven't created a new cell. It's all counting as one drawing. And this gets especially frustrating because you're like, okay, well, I only want to change this drawing. I don't want to create a brand new one. Say, for example, I just want it to have an arrow sticking out the side for whatever reason. Now this affected the original one. So how do I get the original circle? Right click and go to duplicate drawing. It will put a split down the center here. That's now become a different drawing. So if I put my arrow in, it disappears. There we go. So now we've got two different cells going across 20 frames on one layer. I hope that all makes sense. I feel like I'm rambling a bit in this one. Yeah. A way to test how many cells you have in a drawing is by going to the cells panel over here. Expand it out a bit and hit the preview button. And you can see now that there's three notches in this for this layer. There's nothing, there's the circle, and there's the circle with the arrow. So it allows you to access every drawing that you have made for that particular layer. Another way to do it is by selecting the artwork itself, going to a new frame, touching up here, and then pasting. That has now created a new drawing. You can see it's now become number 3. If I put a swirl around it, it's not affected the previous ones. We have now made a new drawing. So that's a very jumbled and messy way of introducing the timeline. It probably doesn't feel too clear yet, but as we start launching into our animation series, there's going to be a bunch of them. We're going to talk about frame by frame animation. We're going to do a puppet rig one. We're going to do some bone rig animation as well. Dive into any one of those series, and hopefully with this video giving you a little bit of groundwork into this way of thinking, we should be able to get some actual animation going with some actual characters and some actual storylines, and we'll be able to make some fun stuff to show off. So until then, bye-bye!